Hi, and welcome back to Small Caps. My name is Jess Furtick. I'm your host, and I'm delighted to welcome Martin Stein, the CFO of Altech Batteries Limited. The company's ticker code is ATC. Hi, Martin. It's great to have you on the show.
Hello, Jess. It's great to be here, and thank you for having me and for your guests for listening in.
Now, Martin, I know Altech hasn't been on Small Caps for a while. So, since we've had a bit of a break in interviews, I was wondering if you could provide our Small Caps audience just a brief overview of the company's technology, and perhaps touch on your background and that of the board as well.
Okay, certainly. So, Altech's got two key projects. They're both in the battery space. The first one is called the CERENERGY battery project, uh, and that is a project looking to commercialize novel technology for batteries, which is sodium chloride solid state technology batteries. And the sodium chloride is purely just table salt. So these batteries are made with predominantly table salt, sodium chloride. Now, I'm not a chemist, but the chemistry dictates that if you heat the sodium chloride, you can get the sodium to form a metal. The chloride comes away from the sodium, and the sodium forms a metal that charges and discharges the battery. So we're looking to commercialize this technology, and we're looking to build sea container size batteries, which is 1 or 2 megawatt size batteries. These are really large size batteries, and they're for industrial purposes. So we're talking about utility electricity providers or data centers or any industry that has a requirement for large batteries to form part of their renewable energy solution. Of course, you cannot have renewable energy without batteries because the renewable energy is intermittent in its production. The sun only shines during the day and wind only blows at certain times, but you need to stabilize the grid 24/7. So you need to have these batteries connected to the grid, and that's the product that we're looking to construct. Really exciting project there as it's really the next phase of the renewable energy transition is having these batteries. Now, the other project that we're doing is called Solumina anodes, and what that involves is increasing the capacity of a lithium-ion battery by including silicon in the graphite anode. Now, silicon has 10 times the capacity of graphite, so the industry recognizes it as the most promising anode material, but it's so reactive that by itself it cracks and it swells and it's not suitable. So there's many companies around the world trying to solve this problem of how you get the silicon into the battery, and there's a big prize for whoever can achieve it because obviously the lithium-ion battery industry is massive. So what Altech does is it coats that silicon with high purity alumina that encapsulates the silicon, and it stops the swelling and the cracking and allows the lithiation to still occur. So that's our other project. So two projects, one in the non-lithium battery space with a very safe, reliable, fireproof technology. And the other one is a battery materials coating technology for improving anodes for lithium-ion batteries. Now, I think the next question was a little bit about me. So, yeah, I'm the Chief Financial Officer. I'm a chartered accountant by training, but I've been in industry now for 15 or 20 years and really heavily involved in the financing side of things for Altech and looking to get the finance to construct the plant to build the batteries that we're talking about. And on the board, we have the CEO and the managing director is a gentleman by the name of Iggy Tan. And Iggy Tan's he's a chemical engineer and he's got a long track record of building projects and bringing projects into fruition and to construction. He was actually one of the first to produce lithium outside of China. He He constructed a mine and processing facility in Western Australia and a downstream processing facility in China. That was back in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, I think, when lithium was just starting to take off. And he sees the batteries that we're doing now as lithium 2.0, if you like, as the future of the renewable energy transition.
Fantastic, Marty. Thank you so much. You certainly have a very credentialed team, and your projects are really, really interesting. I'm very interested about your Serenergy project that you spoke about before, which has received the highest possible rating from S&P Global, and is classified as dark green. What does that rating or validation mean for Altech's strategic direction and its ability to attract investment?
Well, we're really excited to have that green rating because the project is extremely green. It's using salt instead of lithium, copper, cobalt, manganese, and graphite. It uses salt. Lithium-ion batteries use all those other raw materials. Our batteries are extremely safe and fireproof and explosion proof. Um, and they're almost 100% recyclable. So it's a very green product. It's part of the renewable energy transition, which is an extremely green process as it is. And to have this rating is, it's just a stamp of approval to say that we're meeting all the green credentials. We have a green product for the renewable energy transition. And that is good for a couple of things. Obviously, it's good for the environment, but it's also good for Altech to be able to secure certain types of finance which are only really available to green projects.
So interesting. Now, the green bond market is stated to be approaching 250 billion annually, with a significant proportion of that in Europe, actually. How does Altech plan to leverage this substantial market to potentially finance your CERENERGY project in particular?
Yeah, good question. So I guess the key reason for getting the green accreditation was to attract this green finance. So now that we've got it, we can tap into that green bond market where financing facilities are available on really good terms if your project meets the green criteria. So it's a massive financing facility available throughout Europe. We're working with a Norwegian investment bank called Pareto Securities, which is really a pioneer in the green bond market. They can raise a lot of money through the green bond market, and we're working with them now to try and facilitate some potential green bond financing to construct our Serenergy plant.
So interesting, Martin. Now, we know that the importance of battery storage in the transition to a low carbon sector or economy is so vital. How does Altech sort of see its Serenergy battery technology as differentiating itself from other battery storage technologies that are available in the market?
Yeah, so these batteries are a key part of the renewable energy transition. I'll just add first of all, and there's places like California that are putting 6 gigawatt hours of battery capacity into their grid every evening now, which is the biggest form of energy into the grid of a night time in California is batteries. So it's happening, right? It's surpassed nuclear or gas or renewable energy itself. Batteries are now the biggest input into the Californian grid of an evening. So they're there, they're making it happen, and I think the rest of the world's catching up.
Mm.
And what differentiates our product is there's a few things. The first is that we use different raw materials. We use the sodium chloride, the salt, if you like, and the nickel powder, whereas the dominant lithium-ion battery technology uses raw materials including lithium, copper, cobalt from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where 70% of the cobalt's sourced from the Congo, uh, They use graphite, with most of the world's graphite coming from China, and they use manganese. So lithium-ion batteries are at the mercy, A, of the pricing of those raw materials, and B, the supply of those raw materials.
Mm.
And when you're talking about energy security, I don't think you really want to be at the mercy of those things to secure your energy storage. Our batteries, Serenity batteries, use the sodium chloride, which is very, very cheap and readily available, and nickel powder, which is also readily available. So that's a key difference. Another key difference is the safety aspect of our batteries. Our batteries, because they're solid state technology, they don't have the thermal runaway and the overheating that the lithium ion batteries have. So our batteries are completely fire and explosion proof, which is another very good aspect. We've seen some really bad episodes around the world where lithium-ion batteries are catching on fire and causing all sorts of havoc. So we don't have that risk either. And a really big differentiating factor is the ongoing maintenance cost of our battery. We don't have the cooling fans and moving parts that lithium-ion batteries do, which requires a lot of maintenance and ongoing costs. So we're very, very cheap to run over the life of the battery. We have a very long life, two times or three times the life of a lithium-ion battery. The sodium doesn't degrade like lithium, just like your mobile phone, right, Jess? It
Yeah.
starts great when you first get it, but pretty quickly it starts to degrade and the battery life isn't as strong as it once was, and the capacity degrades because the lithium degrades. We don't have that problem in our batteries because the salt doesn't degrade, and these batteries have a very long capacity for a very long time.
So
And also the temperature range. We can take these batteries to -40 to +60 degrees and they'll work perfectly fine. Whereas lithium is generally restricted to about 15 degrees to 35 degrees Celsius. If they fall outside of that range, the lithium becomes viscous and the charging and discharging of the batteries is decreased. So we've got a number of advantages over lithium-ion batteries.
Hmm. So interesting. I was actually going to ask you that as my next question in terms of the environmental and economic advantages of a sodium chloride battery versus lithium ion and other battery technologies out there. It's so interesting. So it's obviously much cheaper because you don't have any of those other metals inputs. It's environmentally better because you don't have to go and extract all those commodities that you mentioned, cobalt from the Congo, you said, obviously jurisdictional risk and things like that as well with that. Copper, silver, I think is even in them, platinum. There's heaps of commodities that go into those lithium ion and other battery storage components. And then you mentioned the 2 times long life of the sodium chloride battery, which is so interesting. Are there any sort of environmental factors or advantages? I mean, you guys have been given the dark green rating from S&P Global, assuming it's because of that, but then is it also the safety aspect? Is there anything more to that?
It's all those factors combined and the recyclability of the product. They take that into consideration as well. We have 50% less greenhouse gas emissions than a lithium-ion battery. So all of these factors are taken in when you receive or don't receive the green accreditation from Standard and Poor's. And we're just environmentally friendly on so many aspects of this battery, right down to as we've talked about, the extraction and mining of the raw materials.
So
We just don't have that.
So interesting, Martin. And so wouldn't that sort of make lithium-ion batteries and other storage options redundant if, your technology is cheaper, more environmentally friendly, and uses less elements and components in the storage? I mean, is the
That's
application of this just for industrial, or could it be used in electric vehicles? Yeah, I'm just really curious. And I saw our audience.
yeah, we're targeting we're targeting the grid storage and data center applications.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it can be used in motor vehicles, and it has been in the past, but we're moving towards the batteries for the industry. Now, the tech companies, the big tech companies like the Metas and the Googles and whatnot, have said that the bottleneck for AI with the AI transition
Mm.
is going to be not computing power, it's going to be energy
Yeah.
security. Uh, Artificial intelligence is going to use a lot of energy. So we're already speaking to some of these tech companies about our product, and they're scrambling to secure battery storage for their ongoing needs, which is going to be, it's massive now with their data centers, but as AI becomes more prevalent, the requirement for energy and energy storage for them is going to be a massive challenge as well. And from our discussions with them, they are very reluctant to go technology that is dangerous.
Mm.
They just can't afford to take that risk. So to have a battery that is extremely safe, fireproof, and explosion proof is very appealing to them.
Yeah, so interesting, Martin. You know, we use these technologies, particularly with AI, and none of us really understand the amount of energy that goes into actually generating that technology. So the demand for your storage systems, no doubt, will just be ever increasing. Now, just on,
Exactly. And just if I could just add another thing there, I read a really interesting article a couple of days ago, and it was saying that also the heat, apart from the energy costs themselves, the biggest cost to these data centers is going to be keeping the heat under
mm,
control and keeping them cooled.
yeah,
Because they're going to give off a lot of heat. Now, lithium-ion batteries have that heating problem and they need a lot of cooling fans. We don't have that problem. We don't need the cooling fans. We actually heat our batteries up to start off with, but then they're maintained at a fully insulated temperature. There's no heat dispensed outside of these batteries, so we're not going to have those ongoing costs either, or the heat concerns that come from the lithium-ion batteries.
it's so interesting, Martin. Now, what are the next sort of key milestones for CERENERGY in terms of development, commercialization, further market penetration, particularly, you know, now that we've discussed this demand that is there and your dark green energy rating as well?
So we've secured three offtake arrangements for the first 5 years of production from our CERENERGY 120 megawatt hour plant envisaged for Germany. So we're looking to take that to get the finance. So the thing that we're really focused on at the moment is securing the finance to construct the plant. And that is the key milestone. I think that will be a company changer for Altech. We can raise that finance and construct the first plant. So we're really working hard on achieving that first milestone.
Yeah, fantastic, Martin. Thank you so much. And you sort of already answered my next question, which was sort of how the company is going to contribute to the broader global efforts in terms of a lower carbon economy. And we've touched on a lot of those points already. But maybe if you could just give us, you know, a couple of points.
Uh, well, let me just say the net zero transition to get to net zero emissions is obviously renewable energy focused. It won't happen without renewable energy. And renewable energy, because of the intermittent nature of its production, can't happen without batteries.
Mm,
Uh, and I think a lot of people understand the concept when they talk about their residential property and they talk about, well, I've got solar panels on my roof, but I want batteries so that I can store the surplus during the day and put it back into my house at night and run everything at night. So everyone understands it from a residential level, But what I like to say is that's exactly the same problem and concept that the big renewable energy producers, the big solar farms, the big wind farms that countries are facing with their renewable energy transition. The same problem occurs in that it can't happen without batteries. So that's where we feed into the renewable energy transition is the second part of the first part is producing the renewable energy, which is happening a lot. The second part now is the batteries coming online to support this transition.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about securing the stability of energy, renewable energy. It's so funny, Martin. I went to Amsterdam couple of years ago, and they are renowned for their renewable energy. And I was at the airport, and they have electric buses, and everything sort of in the airport runs on renewable energy. But it had been raining, and everything just stopped.
Is
So
that
they
right?
really use some of your batteries, I think, or something analogous too, because it was just hilarious. So it creates a lot of inefficiencies. Obviously, renewable energy is amazing. We're using power that is natural, that is better for our economy or global environmental economy, but it needs to be sustainable. So Altech is providing that solution.
Yeah, and a similar thing happened. I don't know if you saw in Portugal and Spain about 3 weeks ago, where um, I think there was 60 million people without power. It was only for a short amount of time, but they were without power because uh, there was renewable energy that there was a problem with it being put into the grid, and there was no battery backups to stabilize that. And if they would have had batteries, it would have fixed the problem. So that's a real life example very recently of where 60 million people were without power in Spain and Portugal because they didn't have the battery supply to stabilize the grid when it was required. So um,
Yeah,
that's
stability
what
is
can
so
happen.
yeah, stability is so key, and also to win the trust of, a lot of the naysayers in renewable technologies. If we can show that consistency and reliability of renewable energy through this battery storage technology, I think it would put that argument to rest. Anyway, Martin, that's pretty much all the time we have for today. But before we leave, I just wanted to get, two or three key investment highlights, if you will, as to why investors should invest in Altech Batteries Limited.
Well, the renewable energy transition isn't going away. And to make that transition a success, the world needs batteries. We've got a product here that is extremely safe, fireproof, and doesn't rely on a huge supply chain of raw materials being mined, sometimes unethically, sometimes under the control of other countries and their ability to provide those raw materials. We don't have any of those issues. So we think we've got a product here that could provide a very good solution to the renewable energy transition for not only 1 or 2 years, but for a long period of time, Jess. So
Hmm.
uh, if someone was going to invest in Altech, I would say to them, look at that potential and see whether it fits in with their investment criteria and their green investment requirements.
Yeah, fantastic, Martin. And of course, the company's recent rating with S&P Global as well really validates the project's technology, which is very exciting, and opens the doors for that green bond market, as you mentioned before as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Martin. Really grateful that you came onto the show to chat to us today. Such an interesting technology, particularly with AI generation and the need for this technology. And yeah, really looking forward to having you back on the show again to tell us more about potential offtake agreements, maybe in the pipeline, and also development of your two projects that you have.
Yeah, it was really a pleasure speaking with you, Jess, and thank you very much for having me.